So we light our first candle for hope. It becomes faith. And light our second candle. Alright. Come on, we can do it. Peace. And there is a safe thing for me to be putting matches on there, I promise. So the second theme of Advent being our journey to Christmas, right? Our second theme of Advent is peace. And there's a lot of things we can think about peace at Christmas. One of the things that I've always enjoyed doing is sitting with the Christmas tree when it's dark and just looking at the twinkling lights. To me, that really feels like peace at Christmas. And it's extra fun because the last 2 days, so it's kind of a side story. However, it brings me a lot of joy. So just in a couple weeks. But it brings me a lot of joy because I've had this little carousel ornament. It's about this big. And when I got it from my aunt and uncle, many years, I've had it since high school, right? It came with a little spinny thing that you hooked it on, so it actually spun the ornament around, which is really cool because it's a carousel, right? I mean, it's not just a horse, it's like the whole little round thing, right? So, and it usually spins backwards, which is kind of funny, but it spins, which is neat. Now, I've had this little spinny thing for over 20 years now, right? And so in the last couple of years, it's probably the last 5 years at least, it's gotten a little twitchy. Like, it'll spin and then it kind of doesn't do anything. And over the years, it's gotten more of the not doing anything and not much of the spinning. And I've even like looked for replacement spinners in the last few years. And this year I was like, should I even bother to put it on the spinner thing? Because it's usually just sort of sits there and makes a little mechanical sound. The last 2 days, it's been spinning nonstop without the twitchy part. And usually mechanics don't do that, right? Usually when they're on the downward slide, that's the end. I don't know. Anyway, so that brings me a lot of joy and peace because I look over it and I'm like, and it's spinning and it's so cool. So that's part of my delight right now at Christmas. So, but why peace at Christmas? We talked about this in our class on Wednesday, and it was a really, sorry Nancy, it was a really great look on your face because she was like, I never thought about that before. I don't know the answer. And it was really like, yeah, I know. It was a great question. Because, and Pat had a great answer because, see, this is what happens when you go to class. We're going to talk about it at church. She said it's a very peaceful scene. The nativity story, the way it's written, that's a really good point. We've got rich folks, the magi, we've got shepherds, we've got all sorts of animals hanging out, angels, the whole shebang, and everything's all very peaceful. It's a very peaceful scene. Okay, we can go with that. And with that is the idea we're seeing peace in every situation because usually you would think a barnyard is not a peaceful scene. It's usually kind of chaotic and loud and I almost called you all up and said, you want to do that song, Friendly Beast? Because that would really go. Oh. But I didn't think if I asked you that on Saturday afternoon, you'd be like, yeah, that's a great idea. So for me, what Christmas, we're at peace at Advent, I mean, all of Advent, well, all the spiritual journey, but Advent is about how do we take these things into not just now, but we're remembering, we're coming more into our Christ consciousness, right? So how do we live from that place of peace all the time? And so we were talking about this, and part of that is like knowing what is ours to change, right? Because peace is not just going about saying, okay, I'm just deciding to be in the Zen place about all of this. That's not what it's about. It's about saying, what are the things that don't work that I need to do something about? right? If you're out hiking and you get one of those little sticky bush things in your sock, you're going to probably stop and take it out, right? Unless there's a bear chasing you or something, in which case, you probably will leave it in. But you're going to take care of the sticky thing in your sock, right? And so finding a place of peace is very much like that. If something is causing you problems, you can't ignore it. If you ignore the sticky thing, it's not going to go away. You have to do something about it. And so it made me think of the serenity prayer, which you probably have all heard at some point. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. And then, but he wasn't, Reinhold Niebuhr, who wrote that, was not the first one to come up with this idea. There was several other versions. 8th century Indian Buddhist scholar Shantideva wrote, if there's a remedy when trouble strikes, what reason is there for dejection? So if there's something we can do about it, do it. And if there is no help for it, what use is there being glum? It's a great prescription for peace right there, right? If there's something to do, do it. If there's not, move on. It's a recipe for peace. So peace comes from acknowledging and doing something about the things that keep us from feeling peaceful. And sometimes the thing to do is action. And sometimes the thing is to accept, to forgive, to release. Oh, it's so hard sometimes to release those things. But we can't change the past. We can only change how we feel about it, right? So if that will bring you more peace, decide to let it go, then that sounds like a great plan. It's okay, we're going to do Burning Bowl in a couple weeks, and I'll give you a chance to do that even more. However, peace is all about that. So in the Christmas story, Herod, I know, you think bringing about Herod, I know that you all were in class, you know where I'm going with this, but Herod actually reminds us about peace, because he represents the ego and the desire for control and to have things the way he wanted, which is not living in a place of peace, right? He wanted peace through control from an ego place. However, the revealing word says peace is harmony and tranquility derived from awareness of the Christ consciousness. Harmony and tranquility derived from awareness of the Christ consciousness. That is not a description of Herod. And so Herod reminds us what it looks like when we are trying to get what we want, not from a Christ consciousness. So if we're in Herod consciousness, there is no peace. But if we're in Christ consciousness, we have a chance to find peace. And so I love when this happens. So I'm looking on, just flipping through Facebook the other day, and one of my friends who grew up in Unity and all that, she's out there being a young adult doing her thing, and she said, I was really anxious about stuff. I was having a really rough day, and so she was definitely not living in a place of peace, right? She was freaking out about everything. And then she said, what would happen if I just totally screwed up? Well, what would happen? And it was so freeing to her to realize that if she totally messed up, she would just get on with it. And then all that she said she felt the anxiety and the stress just off it went. Because even if she messed up, she would just keep going on. She used a few stronger words than I did, but the general concept is the same. What if you totally mess it up? So what? You messed it up. get on with it. And you don't have to be stressed about it. There's one more story, well, lots of stories, about peace and about Christmas time. You may have heard a story about the World War I peace truce, Christmas truce. It wasn't an official thing. Apparently, these kind of like truces, informal truces had been happening throughout the war up to that point where everybody would like kind of scurry up and get their wounded and then scurry back. It was kind of a thing that they did apparently along the lines. But there's many, many stories of at Christmas 1914 of soldiers from opposing sides getting up and sharing, trading cigarettes and sharing gifts and playing games and stuff like that and having a little truce. And this happened just that one year. The world, according to the people who know things about these things, things kind of changed and got a little less civil after that. Not that war's civil, but you know what I'm saying. But what's really beautiful about that story, of course, is, yes, they stopped and they hung out together and all that. But it's that they remembered their humanity. That they had so much more in common than they had different. And here were folks who were actually even doing the same thing. So they even had more in common than, your just average person who may have completely different things they're doing. They're doing the exact same thing. They have so much in common. They're so much more the same. And that humanity is how we bring about peace. Remembering that truth about who we are and that whoever's on the other side in the trench opposite you is more the same than they are different. No matter how much you disagree with them, or how much they've been a real, what. We have so much more in common. And so sometimes it seems like our humanity, our faults, our inherent consciousness is going to be the downfall of humanity. Sometimes it feels like that. We have moments. But I believe that our humanity, knowing who we are and knowing that we are all that, we are all connected, be able to see the divine in the enemy, I think that that's our salvation. I think that is our greatest strength. Because we are all in this together. We're all the same. And so I believe that is the story, one of the great lessons of the Christmas story, is that no matter where you started from, whether you were born in a stable, whether you were born in a palace, we're all the same. And that's how we bring peace about in our world.